All right, right now we are joined by the 20-year-old super late model driver from Maine, the winner of the Kulwicki Driver Development Program Championship. It's Max Cookson. Thanks so much, Max, for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me on.
So before we go into the whole KDDP championship, I want to take it back to your weekend at Five Flags. Unfortunate weather that you all had there, but I think this was your first time in the Snowflake and your first time racing at the track. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we went down and tested the week before, so that was the first time I'd ever even been there in person. So it was everything was new. The racetrack was new. I of course drove one of Donnie Wilson's cars, which are different to the cars that I run back home. So new race car, new team, new racetrack. So there was a lot of news and a lot of things to figure out and get adjusted to for sure.
But you came home with an eighth place finish despite all of that news. So talk about that process, like with what I think like less practice time and even to racing for Donnie in one of his cars.
Yeah, so I felt like the test went good. I felt like we did better than we should have throughout the test, not as good as we wanted, but probably overachieved a little bit, as far as getting, adapted to it. Wish we did a little bit more. And then obviously the unfortunate with the weather losing kind of some of that day of practice, and then lost the practice that was Saturday morning. So I felt like that would have benefited me, more than others, just not having the experience in the laps there. But as far as the race goes, I feel like, the biggest difference was back home, we heat race. So everyone draws a pill and we run 12 or 15 lap heat races. So kind of my style of racing, back home, there's a lot of really worn out racetracks, and you don't really ever bully the car, I'll call it, and run it 110%, trying to turn a fast lap, because even in a 15 lap heat race or something, you can still wear out the tires, and they get a full true heat cycle, cooling down the whole time. So really never had to do that. So the biggest difference was having a time trial, and it got rained out on Saturday, so we weren't in the race car for a full 2 days, and then no practice Monday morning, and then just went time trial. So definitely feel like the race car was capable of qualifying a lot better than we did. But once we got into the race, we passed 19 cars and came home eighth, which looks is a good respectable day. But the reality of it is, if we qualified better, we would have ran better. So I was happy with the day. I left there feeling like we got to go there and learn the racetrack, and the whole weekend's just different. So left there with a ton of knowledge, what to do, but really what not to do down there. So I feel like we left with a ton of knowledge and experience. Wish the results were a little better, but still left with a respectable day.
I think the whole purpose of, when you're going through the ranks is to learn, experience new things, and definitely had that new experience at Five Flags. You mentioned, the difference between, what you do back home in Maine and racing up in the Northeast, which is, you usually do heats and then you go into this experience doing qualifying laps instead of the heats. Do you like the heat racing a lot better? Do you feel like it's a lot more, I don't want to say more engaging, but do you just like that style of qualifying better than what we had at Five Flags?
Well, I mean, I feel like if we time trialed at Oxford and I could time trial in the top five, I'd really like it. But I do like time trials better, just because if you draw last in a good heat race, let's call it, where everyone in your heat race are good cars, and you draw last in it, you're shit out of luck. So the time trial things, it's way better. It's how it should be everywhere, in my opinion. But it's just I'm not accustomed, to doing that. We don't ever do it back home. So I feel like, I just gave up, a little bit. A 10th would have put me 15 spots better. So gave up a little bit there, but I think really, it's just one of those things that we don't do it back home. And it's just, it's hard to get adjusted to just go be mean to the race car, let's call it, for 2 laps. So definitely feel like that was the biggest negative of the weekend, was me not qualifying where I should have.
I mean, yet again, though, finish in the top 10, which I know, like, as the race car driver, you want more, but considering all you guys faced that weekend, I think that's fantastic. And with the heat races too, I like to say that's just qualifying chaos. That's chaotic qualifying, which can be fun to watch. Sometimes maybe not the most fun to race, but I appreciate you kind of sharing your perspective there. And even to talking about, you making your debut at Five Flags. I know you have a great history with iRacing. That's kind of what helped you kind of launch your career. Did you practice at Five Flags on iRacing, or did that help you kind of translate, what the track would be from the sim to the real thing? Or did you just kind of go in cold turkey into your test?
Yeah, so I haven't done a whole lot of iRacing, in the last 2 years since the real life thing has started, but I did get on there and ran a couple laps, and I will say it's probably one of the more similar tracks, because there's, like Oxford's on iRacing and a few others. So I will say it's probably one of the more similar racetracks, but Five Flags is definitely an animal of its own. It's bigger, it's faster, it's super worn out. But I really, once we got into the race and kind of settled in, I really loved the place. And, obviously we were able to make good headway, forward. So I really do like the racetrack, and really looking forward to next year.
And talking to you about, from iRacing, I think you started in karts. Who kind of cultivated your love of racing and kind of helped you, learn the cars? Because I feel like too, just from research learning about you, you're very hands-on with the work that you do on the cars and things like that. And you're very attuned to knowing what the car needs in the first few minutes of getting in it. Like, who helped you kind of get to that point in your career where you're so knowledgeable and to where you're so passionate about the sport that you're in?
Really, just had, got really, I'll give myself a little credit, but really just got really fortunate with, kind of getting aligned, with the right people early on, because we did the karts when I was younger age, and at that age when I'm 4, 5, 6, 7 years old, don't have much involvement of it, and then did the iRacing thing, and then I was 16, got my big break there, and then started the modified thing off, and got tied in with a really good guy in the modifieds, Ben Tinker, and he helped me a lot through the early portion of my modified career. And then towards the year I ran full time in modifieds, Jason Ricker was my at track crew chief, I'll call it. So never did any work in the shop, but was always there, a phone call away, when I was working on the car, in the shop, setup wise. My dad kind of took care and taught me, everything, with the drive on, so kind of his thing was taking care of the motor and transmission and rear end and that such. And then, it was my job and responsibility to learn everything that the car needed, to go fast. So got super fortunate early on with him. And then kind of into 2022 and this last year, my crew chief was Kevin Nobley, who was able, same situation as Jason, has never been to the shop and done anything there, but comes to the races, on the weekend, and we talk pretty much every day, about what we want to do for that upcoming race. So really just been fortunate, and been able to absorb, all the information, I think, rather quickly, to be able to learn, everything that needs to happen, in the race shop, to prepare the car to bring a good car.
What do you think is the toughest thing for, you when you were growing up, or even just a young racer, for them to learn, whether it be about the car or about the industry? Like, what do you think has been the trickiest learning curve for you?
Yeah, that's a hard question to answer. I think I've just been so fortunate, and so lucky the last 3 years that everything is we've just progressed through everything, so right in our pipeline, and if you want to call it that, and our progression up through from, doing the modified thing, and then our first year at Oxford and the track championship there, and the past when, at the end of the year in 22, and then, this year, everything we did with the North and National championships and the Oxford championships and the Kulwicki championship, everything's just been, I don't think I've really gotten to that point of, struggling, what do we want to do, or how should we do this? Everything's just kind of fallen, into place, so I feel like there really hasn't been a lot of work, that's needed to be done there. As far as to this point, the progression has just been, okay, what makes sense? What are we going to go do now? I feel like that's what we've been able to do. And, that's what I think is, led us to the success we've had as far as just kind of doing what we think is right.
you talk about the success, I mean, just naming off, I mean, you won the Oxford Plains Speedway Super Late Model Championship, the National Super Late Model Championship, the first driver from the Northeast to win the KDDP championship as well. I mean, when I read those off to you, and I'm missing a ton of stuff that you've accomplished this year, but what are the emotions that go with that? Is that pride? Is it disbelief? Is it confidence? Like what, when you hear those accomplishments, do you feel?
Points racing is so tough, and there's so many things that involve with it. We won 5 races this year, which is awesome. But I think we finished second 8 or 9 times, and I know at least half of those races we probably could have won. But if you force the issue to win one, and then that guy remembers it for the next one, and then end up not getting a break from him, or he races you a little harder when you're trying to get up through. So much that goes into points racing, and it really, championships are tough to win. You can make a mistake on a Wednesday night in the shop that ruins your weekend, and not only ruins your weekend, but ruins your year. So it's really, it's kind of almost relief, is the feeling that I get. It's like, we did it, we accomplished it, we set out with a goal and we were able to do it. So it is a lot of relief, that I feel. And I feel like it really hasn't all sunk in yet, just because we've been so busy on everything.
I'm sure you'll have a chance to have it all soak in, especially the Kulwicki Championship next week. You're going to get that award. I believe it's on what would have been Alan Kulwicki's 69th birthday. So just kind of talk about that program, what it's been like to be a part of that. And then of course, the feeling that goes along with, winning that championship this year.
Yeah, it's really been, a life-changing thing, I'll start with, on the racetrack, stuff is just kind of, how you represent yourself, at the racetrack and on the racetrack, not only, just how you act in the pit area and how you race, I feel like has done wonders for me this year. And then, off the racetrack, started out the year, doing a few events with the race car, taking the race car to my local elementary school where I went, and excuse me, everything just snowballed from there. We were able to take the car to 9 different events this year, and just they're so awesome. The kids just love it, and it seems like every place we went to, there was always one kid that was just like, that would have been me when I was a kid. That would have been so cool to have. Whether it be, Benro or Johnny Clark, or the race car drivers from the Northeast that I looked up to, when I was a kid. So it was just so awesome, to be able to do all those events, and did a lot with the Autism Society of Maine. Went to an event with them and did a charity walk for them in the spring, and was able to raise $3,900 for them to give to them at the end of the year. And just countless fundraisers we did for jackets and school supplies, and a numerous number of things. So it really, it started off just doing it, kind of to go and do that stuff, and then kind of just fell in love with doing it, and wanting to do it. And it seemed like every week we were doing something. So it was really humbling and really awesome to see what I could do, with even my platform at the short track level.
I think something that gets missed sometimes, whether it's on the national level with motorsports, even at the local level, is the community outreach. And I will say I love what the Cookwicky Development Program does in helping reaching out to your local communities. And even it's so important to engage the young fans. So to hear that you were able to bring some of the cars to the kids at the local elementary schools, like that's awesome. Did you have any of the kids, like were they able to like go in the car, like sit in the car?
Yeah, absolutely. Almost all the events the kids were able. There was a couple where they didn't want the kids to, but a couple of them. And one of the funny stories that I have from there is we were at a family retreat that they had a weekend retreat for, and brought the race car there for one of the days. And kid probably 11, 12 got in the car and was, to start a race car, you're going to turn the master on, and then the ignition, and then the starter, and you got to kind of know where all the switches are. And a kid figured it out and started the car when I didn't want to. And the teacher there was like, well, just take the keys out. I was like, I can't. So I ended up, having to unplug the ignition box and stuff. But it was just, it was fun. And, they loved it to sit inside of it and, play around with the shifter and, stuff. So it was super, super cool.
So that kid's probably ready to go to a race. Like put him on a track, you know? You can figure out how to start a car. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
You know, I think we talked about this a little bit before we started recording the episode, but I mean, you've been so busy this year. I mean, I don't really feel like you've had a time to kind of chill. Now that this racing season, I feel like it's dying down a little bit. Like, do you have more time, you know, spend with family, whether it's like a hobby that you do? Like, do you have time to relax before you start going again in 2024, or is it all hands on deck to prepare for next year?
Yeah, really. So while I was in Pensacola, my guys back here went and picked up our new race car. So now it's all hands on deck, getting that ready for the car store opener at Southern National. So we got basically eight weeks plus Christmas week to get that car done. So now it's start getting everything lined up and ready for that. And of course we've done a few banquets, the quickie banquets next week, and get through all that and start prepping for 24. So don't think there's going to be a whole heck of a lot of downtime between now and then. And of course, once racing starts, it's straight ahead. We raced 34 times last year from April to the end of the year. So be straight ahead.
Last question for you. I feel like for me in my role, for Christmas, I usually ask for a lot of like journalism equipment, or whether it's like technical equipment. Like as a race car driver, do you ask for like equipment for like your car, or like, what is it, like new oil or something like that? Like, do you have like driver or racing related Christmas list, or do you go
Yeah,
looking out?
20. I'm 20 now, so it's usually just a lot of socks. But
Yeah.
no, I think last year they got me some gloves and shoes for Christmas. So I guess you could say that they do some stuff like that. Yeah.
Hey, that's helpful though. I feel like the older you get, the more you appreciate the socks, or even to like a new vacuum cleaner. It gets boring, but hey, they're useful, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, Max, thanks so much for joining today, and I wish you the best of luck in 2024.
Yeah, thank you very much.